it does take a lot out of you. You got that real quick. And just to get them in the right spot and hold them. They don't cooperate as much as we'd like, but sure it's not comfortable for them either.
In 1 hour shearing, you expend as much energy as a jogger would running 8 miles.
The lessons here reinforce concepts that protect the person doing the shearing while providing a safe and reliable approach for the sheep.
The moves that I use is the most comfortable for both the sheep and the shearer. Make it easier so we can get it done the quickest.
And while an expert can make the job look easy, some students literally wrestle with their lessons, controlling the animal, repositioning to start again, and finally getting a handle on equipment and sheep.
What's the most difficult part of all this, do you think?
Remaining calm. I don't know, it gets really stressful, I think. You know, they start moving and you don't feel like you're doing the right thing. And actually, once you start shearing them, they get really slippery. And so it's hard to hold on to them.
So are you willing to give me a lesson? Because I would really like to give it a try.
You really want to?
I really want to.
Okay.
No one's twisting my arm.
All right.
Watching someone else try their hand is a lot different than facing the task yourself. Part of it is remembering to do a whole series of things at the same time.
You ready?
Now, do I need to be holding her leg, or is she okay?
Nope, she's just right like that. Oh, you want to start right here.
Right in here?
Yep.
And I need to be holding the skin.
There you go. Try and take this wool off right here. Follow my hand. Come back here a little bit more.
I'm not giving you a very clean cut, am I?
That's all right. It's your first time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like everybody else. I'm scared to death of cutting her.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm not getting down deep enough, am I?
Yeah, you got to lay it right down on the skin. Don't worry, the camera's right on you.
I know, and I'm doing kind of a messy job. It's embarrassing. I should have practiced a time or two.
Well, you do 4 or 5 more, you'll be good.
Wool has long been a natural, versatile, and renewable resource. But like other commodities, the interest in raising sheep and selling wool will rise and fall with the market.
Just go straight down. See how I grab that leg?
And if you want to do the math on that final paycheck,
in the last few years, we've come around 50 to 60 cents a pound. A ewe will give about 7 pounds of wool, so we're talking about, $3 or $4 worth of wool off of a sheep.
You got to really maneuver that.
as with many other educational experiences, these skills don't come easy. They can come, however, with a sense of satisfaction.
At the end of the first day, the students are just beginning to realize how difficult it is, and then they'll start making progress. So at the end of the second day, when they shear their last sheep and the wool came off in one piece, it looks good, the animal is in good shape, everybody's happy, that's when we're all feeling real good about things.
You've got your choice when it comes to sheep. There are more than 1,000 breeds worldwide, with more than 40 in the U.S. alone. And while most farmers raise white wool sheep, natural wool colors also include black, gray, silver, brown, and red, even spotted varieties. And a bit of sheep trivia for you. Because they were such an important animal for early farmers, sheep are mentioned several hundred times in the Bible. Can't tell the difference between a sheep and a goat? Goat's tails go up, sheep tails hang down.
I mentioned earlier that sheep are increasingly being used for landscape maintenance. We've taken you out west to farms and ranches where sheep and goats control weeds and eat their way through large expanses of grassland. Well, our Jason Schultz takes us to Nevada, where one community has turned to sheep to help prevent wildfires.
American ranchers raised more than 5 million sheep and lambs in 2011. Not only livestock that ended up on your dinner table, but animals that provided nearly 30 million pounds of wool for things like sweaters and suits. Ted Borda's family has been ranching these woolly animals for nearly a century.
My family's been in the sheep business here in Nevada since 1914. My grandfather came from France. Herd sheep for his brother, and by 1917 he was married, and by 1920 he owned his own sheep. and we've been in the sheep business since then.
Ted is a retired teacher. He turned to full-time sheep ranching a decade ago.
You spend time with the sheep as a kid growing up with them and stuff. It's just a place you like to be in life. It's a good place to be.
For the most part, Ted's 3,000 sheep graze open areas in northwest Nevada. But come spring, they take on a different task, tied to a disaster that happened in 2004. It was then that an explosive wildfire called the Waterfall Fire consumed nearly 9,000 acres near Nevada's capital of Carson City. That blaze injured 5 people, destroyed some 24 structures, and threatened more than 500 homes and businesses before it was brought under control.
As the sun came up and more resources responded, this fire continued to grow and literally ran south to north across the entire face here of western Carson City.
Fire investigators later pointed to a non-native plant called cheatgrass as a major source of fuel that fed that fast-moving fire.
It is an annual grass. It dries out early in the spring. It's a very fine textured grass, and so it's very easy to ignite and burns very rapidly.
Carson City officials knew something had to be done to control the cheatgrass to help prevent future fires. Considering options for eradicating the cheatgrass, residents favored targeted grazing over things like herbicides and controlled burns. With that feedback, officials reached out to sheep ranchers like Ted Borda. His livestock will graze on land adjacent to homes and commercial property. The city covers his cost of transporting the sheep.
It was $20 million to fight the fire. They lost another $18 million in homes. So this is a pretty cheap way to, knock down those fuels. So if you have a fire, you can control it.
The sheep will only eat the cheatgrass in the spring when the plant is short, green, and tender.
It's a good feed right now. They like it, they'll eat it. But once it goes from green to start carrying out and turning red, it sends up its seed stock. And when the seeds are soft, they'll eat it. But when the seeds start getting hard, they won't touch it.
And then we only have about 3 weeks or so until it matures and it turns green, it turns red, and then it turns brown through the summer, and that's why it's a fire hazard.
During the early spring, the sheep can plow through a lot of cheatgrass.
If we have about 800 sheep using approximate numbers of forage, of what they will eat, and through the week, we're anticipating about 13 tons of fuel being reduced off the landscape per week.
Civic leaders say their targeted grazing is a green approach to reducing the fire hazard.
We pride ourselves in Carson City about open space, and we pride ourselves on good, prudent management of that open space. And the sheep grazing is good for not only fuel management, but it's just good to tell people, you know what, you can use nature to take care of nature.
As for the sheep, well, many residents here will tell you they're happy to have them in their backyards.
It's very low impact. I think the public is very accepting to it, and it's going to be successful.
And Ted Borda believes the program also showcases his sheep as being a community asset.
This grazing is something that's good for the sheep man. It's something that's good for the community. I think it's shown to be a positive for everybody.
That's going to do it for this edition of America's Heartland. Thanks for traveling the country with us. We're always pleased to take you along as we discover such interesting people and places.
Before we go, just a reminder to check out the offerings at our America's Heartland website, americasheartland.org. You'll find video from today's show and lots of other attractions as well. And don't forget, you can also connect to us through many of your social media websites. We'll see you next time on America's Heartland.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand. In America's heartland, living close close to the land.
San Juan, Puerto Rico was the first stop for National Parks traveler Micah Meyer on his recent journey through the Caribbean.
Puerto Rico has one National Park Service site. It's the San Juan National Historic Site. It's this massive fort which was used to control the island.
Puerto Rico was a Spanish colony for centuries, but was turned over to the United States following the Spanish-American War of 1898. Today, visitors come to this World Heritage Site to learn about its history and unique architecture.
I was just blown away by the size of it all. It was just so fascinating to walk around this fort, which, like forts I'd seen from the American Revolution or the War of 1812, was a part of American history, and yet it looked so completely different.
Micah had another chance for great views of Puerto Rico on his flight over to the island of St. Croix, the largest of the 3 U.S. Virgin Islands, but the least crowded.
Hello.
Micah and his travel companion Andy got to explore the whole island. They passed Christiansted National Historic Site, home to an old Danish fort, on their way to Buck Island Reef National Monument.
And there's Buck Island ahead of us.
Known for its underwater trail and nesting sites for birds and turtles, the small uninhabited island was designated a national monument by President John F. Kennedy in 1961.
He had gone there on vacation with his family, snorkeled this Buck Island Reef, thought it was amazing, and decided to save it as a national monument.
Micah decided to go snorkeling too. The next stop for Micah was the Salt River Bay National Historical Park and Ecological Preserve on St. Croix Island.
They've found that within this bay there's a bunch of marine life that universities from all over the country come to study, and so the National Park Service has been able to preserve that.
Micah was impressed by the diversity of the wildlife on the islands.
Each place we went, even though they were so close, all had their own, what I call like a national park zoo. So in the San Juan National Historic Site, there was this massive green iguana. I mean, like neon green iguana. Hermit crabs everywhere. I mean, if it wasn't developed, it was covered in hermit crabs. On St. Croix, there were mongoose. Apparently, the Europeans brought them over to eat the rats, and then they ended up not eating the rats, and they were carnivores, so they ended up eating a bunch of the other species on the islands, which are now extinct. Then we got underwater, and it was, these amazing schools of fish that were bright blue.
On to St. John, the smallest of the 3 U.S. Virgin Islands.
So this is the tree seed,
where Micah discovered many treasures on land and sea. At the Virgin Islands Coral Reef National Monument, he explored little coves and mangrove forests that help build a sustainable ecology.
We saw these vibrant queen angelfish, and they are blue fish that have these like magnetic stripes down them. It looks like glow sticks. It looks like somebody painted them with glow paint.
Exploring the Caribbean's underwater treasures, he says, has been a transforming experience.
I just felt so lucky because this was something that, a little kid from the prairie in Nebraska wouldn't have imagined himself doing, and yet here I was in my own country seeing a landscape that was so foreign and yet was part of my story and my nation's story, and will still be for years, hopefully, if we keep protecting it.
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.